Any second now, and we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome. I'm here with Mr. BaxtyB F1. I'm sure you have seen him on F1 Twitter, and the notorious Pyotr Kurzin. I hope I said your name right, first of all. And one
Why
of
do you think
the
I'm
best.
notorious?
No, I mean, you're one of the best people on political spaces, and as well, on top of that,
No.
you're a huge F1 fan. So I'm honored and pleased to have you both with me here on the Breaking News Show. How are you guys doing?
I mean, I am very honored. I think we're going to be talking politics, but the politics of F1. Ocon is not exactly someone who wasn't shy of some controversy, so I'm looking forward to that and some inevitable debates, I'm sure, as we get into the conversation. But yeah.
How are you doing, Baxty?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, I wasn't surprised to see today's news, but I'm looking forward to chopping it up and just chatting away, seeing how we get on. Yeah, I saw some interesting reactions to it in the brief moment I could check Twitter, but yeah, no, should be good fun.
Well, since we already straight into the deep ends, let's get on with it. The biggest news of today is Ocon and him parting ways with Alpine. I think it would have been a surprise if it wasn't the reaction we saw after Monaco, but it wasn't that big of a surprise after Monaco. And before I get into giving my opinion, because I yap a lot, I'm going to start with you, Baxty, and then I'm going to go with you, Peter. What do you think about it?
So I'm not 100% surprised by this. I mean, I think, look, he was at the end of his contract at the end of this year anyway. He's one of those sort of 12, 13 drivers that were at the end of the contract. And I just think they've been an absolute disaster this year. And it's just been a case of maybe he wants to go and explore other options within F1 or outside of F1. I don't think Monaco helped, but I think this decision probably had already been made by both parties. And I just think the timing of it is convenient for both sides, given what happened in Monaco.
Peter, what are your thoughts on the news, and what do you think in general about everything going on in Alpine?
When the rule changes first happened, I was so excited by the design of Alpine. Aston Martin joining the grid. I was a big fan of maybe we could actually have a competitive and exciting midfield. But Alpine didn't quite reach their potential. They didn't do too badly. I'm going back a couple of years, guys. But Aston Martin, for all their branding, they're very good at marketing. They were crap. And now subsequent years, we've seen some developments, but sort of each team has sort of gone backwards. Aston has made slight gains, whilst Alpine has been sort of a bit plateauing and, if anything, regressed a bit. So that is a shame. But also they're French, so I'm going to be like, yeah, because they're French. And I'm English. I'm joking. I'm joking, but so yeah, I'm not going to be. I'm serious on my political podcast. But I mean, the other thing I'd say is about Ocon as an individual. He has a reputation for being too uncompromising too often with his teammates. He was a pretty polarizing chap, quite, I think, provocative, but in a sort of he would bait people. I remember when it was it Verstappen or someone was weighing themselves and they almost had a fight. It was on the end of Drive to Survive season.
Yeah, it's Max.
Yeah.
It's Max.
And I'm not a massive Max fan, but Ocon is just so I'm not surprised this is happening at all, to be honest. I don't know whether Mercedes can save him a third time though, and I'm not sure what options really there are for him. He's a good driver when he stops prattling around, but yeah, that's what I'd say. My initial reaction is I wait for all the angry Ocon fans to start tweeting at me.
Well, I don't think that the only ones who are gonna start tweeting at you. So you're gonna have a full force of an entire. I don't know. You're not gonna get just the Ocon fans. You're gonna have an alliance coming at you from both ends, from the poli side and F1 side. So I'll be honest with you. In a ways, I feel like, and I've said this before, I feel like Ocon is a little bit disrespected in the F1 realm as a person. And I think that's a little bit unfair towards him, given he's one of the few drivers that came literally from, when I say poverty, and I mean in the standards of F1, especially that his mom and dad had to sell almost everything they have and live in a caravan just to secure his life and his future in motorsport and all the way to get into F1. The other thing is he's a talented driver. He's not one of the drivers you can say, oh yeah, like I'll bring an example, Lance Stroll. He's inconsistent, and there are weekends when Lance is consistent. You're like, oh my god, like where is this form? You should have kept it all season long, and then the next race he does something dumb and stupid. But then nothing would change because Daddy owns the team, and there's nothing you can do about that. In the Alpine case, and if I was in any position to influence any decision, I personally would sit down with Gasly and with Ocon. Like, so here's the thing. We don't want to have any of you leaving the team, but I don't care. Wear the besties t-shirt together. Do whatever you want to do. Solve it. And do just exactly like what Toto did with Nico Rosberg and Hamilton. Any damages from this point forward to the cars, they're gonna come out of your own paycheck. So deal with that. We don't care. It's the $2 million is gonna come off your paycheck. We don't care. And that kind of actually solved the problem. There was still heat there, but in terms of on-track action, there was respect. Alpine is a whole different story. Ever since Alpine, the car brand, took over Renault, a lot of things have changed. And I think somebody have mentioned before, even Fred Vasseur was there at some point, but Fred left before the takeover happened. So they got rid of Cyril, Alan Prost as an advisor, and there was problems in that as well between Alan Prost and the Alpine HQ about their direction of where they want to head at as a team. Things did not look great for them, and then they started like panicking, like, let's start sharing shares, and sold them to Hollywood and global superstars on top of sports superstars like Ryan Reynolds, and you have on top of that Tom Brady. I think it's Tom Brady is the investor in the team.
Patrick Mahomes.
Sorry, yes, Patrick Mahomes, and you have yada yada yada. Anthony Joshua as well. Now, even the investors, I'm sure when they look at it and they be like, right, so this team was supposed to be not a bad team, but decent. Now they are like in the shit. And ever since that transition of takeover happened, it's like they've been pointing fingers and everyone's like, oh yeah, it's your problem. They fired a bunch of engineers. They fired Otmar. They fired... And it's just like a circle of pointing finger. Lauren Rossi, I think, in my opinion, is the most deserving one of the people that got sacked in the Alpine realm. Because when he showed up I remember in last year, Barcelona, and he was like, well, this weekend we're going to be competitive to the Mercedes and Ferrari, and we might be ahead of them. And I was like, is this guy serious? It's like, that video, the famous video of that guy who says, like, trust me, pal, you're not that guy. It's literally him, not that guy. So he dropped such a statement, and then he show up out in Q1 or something like that, or I think Q3 or Q2, you're way off the pace. So yeah, in general, there are a bunch of decisions that have been happening wrong ever since the Alpine takeover. And I think today's scapegoat was Ocon. There's no denying that he's been fighting his teammates throughout his career so hard. Sometimes fair, sometimes it's a little bit to the dangerous side. Like if you remember when he almost sent Alonso in 2022 into the wall in Jeddah. If it wasn't for Alonso reaction and backing off right away and avoiding an airplane crash, literally, him and Alonso scrap in Brazil, either in the race or in the sprint, and Hungarian as well, the way how he was defending, and so against Alonso. So yeah, there are things that build up on top of that, and I think their biggest sore throat was still them losing both Oscar Piastri and Fernando Alonso in the span of 4 days. You went from having Alonso, Ocon, Piastri, three of the best talents currently in F1, to all swept under you. You have nothing. So yeah, I think the next couple of weeks they're gonna be very interesting. And but before we move on from the Alpine realm, Peter, who do you think? So there were talks about Mick Schumacher, and there's Dawn, an Australian driver, and was an F2. Now he's a reserve driver in Alpine. And Mick Schumacher currently he is with Alpine, but in the WEC. Um, who do you think will take that Ocon seat? Do you think somebody on the grid currently, or somebody from the reserve drivers?
Yeah, I mean, I would just premise by saying that, people are going to be reacting to because of what happened in Monaco. It's not strictly down to that. You're not going to just kick out a driver. I think it's due to some of the long-standing points that you've made, plus he's French. But it's also, I think usual suspects, I think, could be considered like Carlos Sainz, although he's more favouring Sauber or Williams because of the Audi backing. Bottas, potentially, Tsunoda. All of these peeps have conversations of some kind, or their representatives have, I guess. The Alpine would have been on the phone pretty quickly, I think. Then there's Jack Doohan, the reserve driver, who's also recently started.
Yes.
Listing.
Yes.
And then you could see sort of contenders like Zhao or people like you mentioned, Mick. But I think there's a little chance of them really getting the seat. I think it's more likely existing people on the grid. Maybe Alpine could do with some experience, particularly you mentioned Mercedes. And whilst it was Rosberg and Lewis, I'm still thinking about Bottas, and he came into that environment with those sorts of rules in place. And maybe he would be a good person to be in the place to know how to navigate this rather sort of difficult time for Alpine, at least pure politically speaking, administering between the different teams and staff. So possibly him, but yeah, I don't think it's going to be someone off the grid, no. But what about Baxter?
Yeah, I think you've kind of listed all the main candidates there. So for me, I think you've got Jack Doohan, you've got Mick Schumacher, you've got Bottas and Sainz. Tsunoda possibly, but I think Tsunoda's probably looking at the Haas drive right now alongside potentially Behrman next year. Jack Doohan would be great, and it'll be a great story, obviously, with his dad being one of the greatest MotoGP riders of all time. You've got Bottas. It would be great for him to carry on because I know he's struggling. He's going to lose his seat at Sauber, so he needs to find something, and he probably clearly still feels he's got something to offer. Sainz should really sign that Audi contract because that needs to kind of happen. He's holding out for Red Bull, and Red Bull are a bit like, mate, we don't want you. It's fine.
The salary is too high.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and also I just think again combustion, and they don't want that at Red Bull. They've done that with Vettel and Webber. They don't want that at Red Bull. But I think honestly, I think Victor Martins is also a shout, actually, thinking about it. I know he's having a bit of a poor season in F2 right now, but he is a very talented young driver, and it would once again give you that double French connection, which I think Alpine really like. But
yeah, I
mean, you look at who's left Alpine in the last few months and last few years, and it just speaks to all of the inner turmoil. I mean, they are just it's just absolutely horrendous, and they blame everyone other than the upper management. Yeah, they gave Otmar 6 months to a year to sort out their problems. This isn't football where you can get a new manager boost. You need time. Like Fred
and you sign players.
Yeah, sign the players, get all the engineers in, and also they are not funding the team properly as well, which is why they slid all the way down from where they were in 2022 to where they are now. They are looking slightly better now than they were at the start of the year, but I think Ocon has just looked at the situation and gone, I'm out. See you later. I don't want anything to do with this. I think he's hoping to get the Mercedes drive, but he won't get it.
So we've got our friend over here. His name is Jihad Al-Ghamdi. He said Alpine gets bought by Andretti. Dream comes true. I think if you're trying to hit two birds with one stone, I think it would be a fair thing. Because look, Alpine have been focusing. They've seen other F1 teams divert their attention to different realms, like going to WEC, going to other racing series. But Alpine have not, or Renault in this case, have not fixed the one problem they've been facing this whole season, or this whole hybrid era: having a good engine, reliable at least, not just being good, just be reliable. It haven't been there for them. So if I was somebody who has control, I keep saying if I was, like I wish I was, but if I was somebody who have control in Alpine, I know leaving F1 could drop your name in the market and you're going to lose a lot of shares and everything, but just focus on being an engine manufacturer. Put your resources in building a good engine, give it to a team that is serious to win in F1, and then build your way back to maybe re-enter F1. And as Renault, nobody is going to say no to that because it's a brand that's been in F1 for a very long time. Left for, if we go back to the early 2010s, there was those problems and everything where it changed to Lotus and all that. So, however, the engine has been there for God knows how long in F1. So if they put their resources and give Andretti the entry, I think it would be a dream come true, as Jazz said. What do you say, Peter?
I think that teams need to stop fiddling. And what I mean by that is that for too many times we've seen certain manufacturers come in, they come out. Renault's been dipping in and out, and then they change the branding. There's no consistency. You're not able to build a basis of predictability, and that messes with your ability to perform because you get the mental status of your team. If a Renault changing to Alpine, yes, it's a superficial name change, but it's sort of like just for branding, for consistency. I think it doesn't help. So I don't think sort of pulling out would be necessarily the wise idea. I wish it had just stayed as Lotus and Renault were the Enjo suppliers or whatever, right? When Kimi Raikkonen had those hilarious radio pieces and, leave me alone, I know what I'm doing. That was my attempt at a Raikkonen accent, everyone. Sorry, Finns. It's, I think it'd be nice to just have them not pick two drivers that are completely like anti one another or have this history. Pick a safe driver, just knuckle down for a few years like McLaren have been doing since that awful period in the 2010s, and try to just build your way up slowly, get more wins, get more podiums, whatever's feasible. And stop fiddling with sort of the name, moving people around. Pick a couple of drivers who are safe. Like, let's just say we pick Bottas. You've got a reliable, dependable sort of, Jensen Button type, does well, not necessarily the fastest driver. And someone like Gasly, right, who's been proven to be a remarkable when the car suits him. And just just put your head down. I don't know if that people would agree with that, but I don't know about the Andretti thing. I'm not sure that would sort of solve the underlying sort of problems that seem to predicate Alpine at the moment.
I mean, well, yeah, there's a lot of things about the Andretti as well. Like Andretti got to the point where he literally called the Congress. I think he's one step away from telling them, "Hey, I have the nuclear ball suitcase at this point, so you can let me in or not." I think, I think it's getting to a point where it's a little bit ridiculous, given to what we've been watching and some performances of some F1 teams on the grid. And I wouldn't say it's unfair for the fans to be mad at the F1 because this man got the blueprint and went and worked on it, which is the base of having an F1 team. He built a huge factory that's not going to benefit just his F1 team, it's going to benefit his teams in the other racing series. So either in IMSA or WEC or in it's in IMSA or in Indy, and you have a lot more. I think hold on, Andretti is Andretti in Formula E? Because I haven't been watching Formula
they
E.
are, yeah.
They are. So he went build a factory, but it's mostly going to benefit the F1. And on top of that, the wind tunnel. And I think he signed who they signed with lately from.
Pat Simmons, they got him from Formula One themselves.
Yes, yes. This he signed past him, so this it can't get serious more than that. So, Baxi, I'm gonna give this one to you from our beloved friend Rory. Talks F1 Alpine / Renault cycle. First half, the team gains some momentum. First half of the team, and the cycle continues.
Yeah, it's been happening for years. I mean, look at when they rebranded as Renault in 2016, and Fred barely made it through that first season, and then they had, Jolyon Palmer and Magnussen, and then Palmer got sacked halfway through 2017 to bring in Sainz, and then, I mean, that's partly why I don't want Carlos Sainz to take the Alpine drive, because he should know that team is an absolute dumpster fire basket case and shouldn't go anywhere near it, which is why I think he left for McLaren. So I think, yeah, Rory's absolutely right. This is the kind of fire half the team moment, and then they're going to get good again, and then they're going to start threatening to win races or nick a race win like they did with Ocon in 21, and then all of a sudden it's going to go wrong again, and they'll go out.
Things are going to implode.
I mean, Oscar Piastri leaving that team was the biggest boss move ever, because I mean he just took one look at that team as a rookie and went, "I'm out. See you later."
You know what's scary for me about that move, because he took a huge bet. It's either, and I think the one thing that people like, oh, Oscar, dear boy, you took a very, very, very bad move, because at the start of 22, McLaren were nowhere near Alpine.
Yeah,
McLaren were far behind, and we're like, why? Like, Alpine is literally ahead of McLaren. Why are you even doing that? And then when Oscar joined and 23 started, and we're like, oh my God, this team is finished. I said, McLaren is finished. Like, how are you scrapping with Nico Hulkenberg, who is rusty and he has raced in God knows how long? I think it was the race 22 when Seb missed Bahrain and missed Saudi due to COVID.
Yeah, started 22. Yeah.
So on 2023, the same thing. It just like, and I remember in 23, one of the members or co-founder of Mena Grand Prix, he was in the paddock, and that very day after the Saudi Grand Prix, I was talking to him, and I was like, so I was the paddock, and he's like, I have some crazy news for you. I was like, what's going on? He's like, McLaren is gonna come back and be competing with Red Bull. I was like, mate, I know, with all due respect, like, are you high, or is it just the old age is catching up to you now or something? What's going on with you? Haven't you seen where these guys are at? They're literally far behind. You can't tell me that they're going to catch up to Red Bull. He's like, well, I've heard it from Mika Hakkinen himself, who was sat there for 2 hours chatting. He told me McLaren is bringing something big, and by next season, they could be close to catch Red Bull, even compete with them. I was like, yeah, this guy's blabbing. And now when I remember that and seeing where Oscar is, I think Oscar should thank firstly Mark Webber for saving his career. Because if it wasn't for Mark Webber, that kid could have just right away jumped on that seat and took it, and now he would be scrapping with Ocon instead of showing the talent that he is. Before we move from the Alpine realm, we have our friend over here, Box. So Pat ex Renault has went to Andretti, and Andretti were going to use Renault engines before Cadillac joins in 2028. So is that a possibility we're looking into, that Andretti actually overtakes the team?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, there was a deal in place because Renault, because they had the least customers, they would then have to supply a new team before they could then bring a new engine manufacturer if they didn't have one already ready to go. Like Audi will be coming with an engine in 26. But then that deal expired, so then they're now not obligated to do it. I think that's a bit vagary that I'm not too sure on, but that I think that was kind of the deal there. But yeah, I mean, it's a massive missed goal, because it would be a chance for them to develop their engines alongside somebody who could give them better feedback, give them that outside perspective on their engines as well, and also develop this working relationship between the two before then Andretti come in and with Cadillac, with and get their own imprint on it all. But yeah, Pat Simmons joining is great. I mean, there was a rumor that Flavio Briatore is going to take over as team principal at Alpine, which would be chaos. The bloke that got fired from the team for race fixing.
I mean, listen, what?
Right, guys,
one
I'll
of
be
those
back in
where
1 second. I just have to
go
go
ahead.
I hate Fabio Briatore. I met him once in Canada. We had some back passes or whatever for the paddock. I think it was my first ever. Yeah, it was Lewis's first ever race win in Canada in 2007, and we were. I was 14, so I don't know what I was doing. And I had the Ferrari pass and the Renault pass and the paddock pass, and I just had them all on around my neck. And you walk into the paddock, most people are not looking around, I was a kid. Walked into Ferrari, just walked around, saw Raikkonen, he gave me a hat, and then walked around out again. No one gave a shit. Italians couldn't give a shit. Walked into Renault. This is not, I'm not making this up. My father can back me up because he saved my ass. Because Fabio was wandering around, saw me with a Ferrari thing, thought I was some spy. I can't remember the word for spy in Italian. No, this is not a joke. He literally tried to pull me by my collar because you have to dress smartly. It was like pulling me around. I was quite small and sort of like I wormed my way out of his grip, ducked under the wing of the car or whatever. And ran back out the thingy to the back. My father was walking down, just like, where the fuck are you? Sorry, if you're not allowed to swear on here. Where the hell are you? And Fabio comes out, big burly dude. My father's Russian, big dude as well. They just had a face off, man. And my father just said the words along the lines of, well, no wonder Ferrari didn't give a shit. They're not you, or something like that. So, yeah, I have a personal gripe with that man. And I really hope he doesn't become the head of the team, because that would be absolutely horrendous.
Fair. Fair for you.
Yeah, no, he's a fat bastard, isn't he? But anyway, sorry, terrible team leader, terrible individual. Sorry, buddy, your show's going to get cancelled now.
Well, I think it's already done at this point. But anyway, Bag, I see you have a personal dispute with the man. But if we talk in the sense of him as a team principal, I think when they look along the line, I don't know why they had to go all the way back to Flavio Briatore, unless maybe you guys can back me up in this way. This could be just a stupid L take, just like people like to give me many times. We've seen pictures flying around for the last 3 years of Flavio Briatore in every Monaco cafe with different team principals, with different drivers, just sitting there chatting, having his coffee and talking with them, mentioning, I don't know what they're talking about, but just like every weekend there's a picture of him with somebody. One time with Toto, one time with George Russell, one time with Fernando Alonso, one time with God knows who. So you're like, so this guy's pretty much like connected to the F1 realm, and I'm sure he has. Because again, I'm sure all these 10 principals he was sitting with and these drivers, Fernando, obviously, I think he's his agent or something like that. Or am I tripping?
They're still connected in some way. Yeah.
Yeah, there is a connection between them. So I am sure all the gossip of the world that's happening in the paddock, either it's secret or not, he has information on it. And specifically when those team principals and those drivers takes off their official merchandise, team merchandise they wear, that basically normal people outside door just doing their thing and nobody can catch them on it. And even if you're gonna go to the, let's say, the media and be like, oh yeah, he told me this, and you'll be like, I don't know what you're talking about. So good luck with whatever you said, unless you have some solid proof. So I think him having all that backdoor knowledge about what's going on in this day and age in F1, he knows probably what's wrong with that team. And I think Fernando Alonso will be his best of all time spy. Ocon could be one of them as well, because I think there were pictures of him and Ocon in few, I don't know what year was it, but there was pictures of him with Ocon as well. So
Mark Webber
him
as well.
coming, but
Yeah,
Mark Webber as well. Yeah, and Mark Webber has the connection with Oscar in that time 2 years ago. So there's a lot to play for that team, and I think in the direction where they're headed, I'm sure they would not say no to him coming back and like, please come and save us. And they need a marketable figure as him, because if he jumps in, maybe even some sponsors will jump in on his ship as well and be like, you know what? Yes, we're gonna be with you. Please go save our money or save whatever. Obviously, they're not gonna just jump and come back all the way to the top, but it will take them probably 2026 will be their biggest bet. Either they're gonna build a proper engine at least, and if they don't, then they might as well just be off F1. Um, Go ahead, Baxty.
Yeah, I was going to say, with just on your comment there about sponsorship, I still think there's a lot of stink around Flavio and Crashgate, and I wonder if people might just be a bit like, oh, we're not sure. We want to give you sponsorship with him in charge. I mean, look at the amount of sponsors they lost in the aftermath. They lost their title sponsor. They lost, they went from having IMG on the side of the car to just having Renault. Yeah, they lost everything, and it's and that's still a sore point for a lot of people in Formula One. Understand, rightfully so. So I think that will still. I know Pat Simmons has kind of been sort of welcomed back into the fold, but Flavio, I think, is a different prospect altogether.
I think I've read somewhere that Pat himself is one of, and don't quote me on this as if I'm the one saying it, but I've read it somewhere, and if I have a way to show it to you, but I'm sure Twitter is an open universe. You can just search on the search tab and you can find it. I think somebody said, like, and I've read about it, this, and I'm not sure if it's correct or not, but they said Pat is one of the masterminds behind Crashgate, and I'm like, I was like, I don't know, but I was like, if the guy is really 100% behind it, he wouldn't be even in F1 during a certain period of time before, like, even him leaving Renault and all that. So yeah, everything with their history, what happened with Crashgate, that's something a long way back in the days. But like today is a whole different identity with that team, but it's not looking promising. Right. So as we're speaking about Renault and Alpine, Ocon, and I think Ocon is not the only one who's without a seat next season. There are a bunch of names. We have Bottas, one of the biggest name of the lot. We have Kevin Magnussen. We have Carlos Sainz, who we know most of these drivers will surely find a seat. We have Logan Sargent. We know already, like, chances of him staying is pretty slim. You have Joe Guan Yu. There's still some hope for him if he backs a good sponsor. And then you have, I haven't forgotten anybody.
There's loads of people without contract. Ocon is one of them. I'm trying to think who else. Tsunoda.
We have Tsunoda as well. You're right.
Danny Rick.
Danny Rick. So we have a whole lot market of, and as I said in the title over here, F1 silliest season. Probably this is the F1 silliest season. So what are your thoughts on the driver market, and what do you think, Baxty, about the chances of many of these drivers? So let's start with Tsunoda and Danny Ricciardo. These are two of the biggest names so far.
I'll be honest, the whole of the driver market kind of hinges on Max, because whether he moves to Mercedes or not, I don't think he will. I think he's going to stay at Red Bull, and I think when he eventually makes that firm decision to say, right, I'm staying at Red Bull for 25, then everything will slot into place from there. Daniel Ricciardo was basically brought back to then go into the Red Bull team, but his performances haven't justified him getting that drive. So in my view, I think that's going to be a clean cut. Bye-bye. See you later. He'll be gone, which is a shame. I love Daniel Ricciardo, but he's just not delivering. Miami sprint aside. Tsunoda's an interesting one because I think Tsunoda should be given a crack at the Red Bull seat. He's more than proven that. He's done 3 years at the team. He's outperformed people that everyone thought was going to destroy him in De Vries and Ricciardo. The whole point of the Red Bull junior team is to find drivers to then drive for the senior team. You have one that has proven himself, is ready to go. He's not going to go and beat Max. He's going to go and be a solid number 2 and hopefully be more consistent than Perez has been. But clearly they don't want to give him that drive. Okay, fine. That's your choice. You want to keep Perez, you want to bring somebody else in, fine. He's been linked to the Haas seat. I like that move for him. I think that'd be a really good place for him to go, sort of fly under the radar for a little bit, and also it'll be a good test for Behrman. Should they be the pairing, the two of them together, I think would actually make quite a good driver partnership.
Peter, if I may ask you, now that is Ocon off that seat, and as Baxty mentioned over here, there are other teams that literally almost don't have 2 drivers. Well, Alpine doesn't. We now know for sure there's 1 seat is vacated for the next season. We know that Audi will have 1 driver already. Nico Hülkenberg signed from Haas. Haas has a potential 100% not having 2 drivers. I'm not saying they're going to enter the season with no drivers, but for the next season, they don't have a driver. They haven't confirmed if they're going to re-sign K-Mag or they're just going to be like, K-Mag, thank you very much. You've given us some good moments ever since you came back in 2022, and it's time to say goodbye this time on a nice terms. What do you think? How's things is going to turn up for everyone in 2025, and especially the Mercedes seat? We haven't even mentioned that.
I think that the silly season is the silly part of the whole actual thing. It started in January with the whole Ferrari and Lewis Hamilton, which frankly I'm still processing, but it's it's insane. I will be honest that I haven't watched as many races as I used to because I'm fed up with Max's dominance. But as I can freely admit, Lewis had his own as well. So, but since I have watched some of the races, Monaco is fantastic. Max is not going to Mercedes. Why would he go to Mercedes? That makes no sense. Knew he's going to. Yeah, I know, but it still doesn't make sense why he would. Red Bull, I know they have their problems with Horner and the general sort of leadership, but at the moment, there's no technical aspect to any other team that's really that close. Ferrari is sort of there, but Max doesn't have an opening there. So for me, I think his best option is to stay at Red Bull. In terms of the other seat, I've always been a fan of Perez, but he hasn't done what we thought he would. So I think that, whoever fills the Red Bull seat's going to be interesting. Mercedes in itself, George is a pretty dependable and likable guy. So I don't think that there's going to be, whoever's picked there isn't going to be too sort of difficult to settle in. As for Alpine, it's that's a bit of a disaster, to be honest with you. I think they need to pick a steady set of hands, as I said, and then someone who's maybe a bit quicker, but can perform consistently, because we've seen what happens when you pick 2 young drivers and both of them end up being quite, unreliable. And that's been a detriment to Williams as well, actually. And speaking of them, I'm not really sure, to be honest with you, what's going to happen in the next 6 months. The market is so volatile, and it's really hard to put your finger on exactly who's going to go where and who's going to keep a seat, who might come in. I like to imagine some really old flames coming back, but let's see where it goes. I think it depends also on the second half of the season. You can get some last minute decisions, can't you?
Right, trying to think on top of my head, like, what are the old flames that could come back? And I don't think we can find anything older than Fernando Alonso on the grid. And anybody on that age, like Fernando Alonso, I'm sure they will perform nowhere near what that man is doing at this age. And I think we have to also not forget Fernando so far. I'm not going to say he doesn't look happy with Aston Martin. He's happy with the team, but just maybe not happy with the performance. And he's a potential that I think, if this performance keeps up and the upgrades of Aston Martin doesn't propel the team forward to be there fighting with the top 4, Yeah, he might be just be like, you know what, I had a good run with Aston Martin, and I want to leave on a high, like not ruin it, and in case this team just like crumbles and goes backward or something, and then I'm again in the back of the field, just scrapping for a few points. Because just last season he was fighting for podiums, and he was near a win in Monaco if it wasn't for the strategy mistake they made last year. And yeah, so there's a lot to look into, and I think here Box said something. Ricardo, I think, will stay for commercial purposes, same as Perez. You get Haas, Hajar, or Lawson to replace Yuki. And there's the other thing here, like you have some talented drivers. Where are you gonna put them? Hajar, he's been showing some great um, skills and talent in F2, and he looks so far out of everyone in that grid in F2. He's probably a better driver than many of the names that's been mentioned a lot since the start of the season, all because of Lewis's move to Ferrari. Like a lot of people mention Ollie Behrman, a lot of people talking about Kimi Antonelli, but nobody's looking into that kid and what he's doing. He's doing some phenomenal, crazy stuff, and just to show his passion, like even like what happened in Monaco when he was yelling at his team. Yeah, it was a little bit overboard. I was like, mate, like, well, what do you want? Like I said, like it's just the game is the game. It's like that. So there's no point to be mad. But the talent is there to be in F1. And but then I can say it's there to be in F1, and then he will be in F1, and it could be a whole totally different story. And we've seen that with many drivers before. So I think Red Bull does not see themselves wanting to associate with Yuki in the near future or far future. Honda wants to part ways with Red Bull, and Red Bull and Honda is one of the reasons why he's on that. I'm gonna call it AlphaTauri, V Carb, or whatever, call Red Bull Diet or whatever you want to call it. But he's one of the reasons why he's on that seat. And the moment Red Bull, or sorry, Honda leaves, then he's out. And I think he's more favorable to take that Fernando Alonso seat when he leaves, because Honda is going to Aston Martin. And there are talks behind, again, these are just rumors, does not mean it's true. There are talks behind that the Honda engine is looking a bit promising for 2026. But then again, people said the same about the Mercedes, and said the same about Ferrari engine. And we really can't tell anything unless we see those cars on the first race of the season, and then we're gonna have the slap shock to our faces who prepared the better engine or not. Just like 2014, when one team just looked far ahead of everyone. But back to the point that Peter mentioned at the start uh, about the dominance, at least in Mercedes, we had two drivers fighting for the win throughout the season. Unlike what we see now at Red Bull, you have one driver is simply carrying the team. And I think if Red Bull this season wins constructors, it would be thanks to Max. If Perez does not pick up his pace, and we're
Yeah,
gonna.
I just wanted to jump in on that point because I think that Alonso, he has a multi-year contract, but he often has these clauses included, right? I think it could be quite amusing to see him end up at Mercedes or Red Bull, potentially. The guy is
a big one.
Yeah, I know, but crazier shit has happened, and if Aston Martin look like they're sort of seeing a bit of a dip in their efforts to sort of reach the front of the grid, could he try to sort of push his chances, push his luck? I don't see why not.
I mean, I think with Alonso, we can expect anything, but there's one thing he should always keep in mind: it's the age factor at this point for him. And I know a lot of people saying, "Oh yeah, the 40 of today is like 30 back in days." Yeah, maybe true, but it's not really. But did we even those days see drivers entering at their very early of 20s, like what we've seen with Oscar and what we've seen with Max, Max 16 in F1? And so the technology helped people to propel drivers now in motorsport at much younger ages that we would ever see back then. So that's one factor. But now that we have spoken about the McLaren and Ferrari, I want to speak about the segment of the show and we've been seeing with both Ferrari and McLaren at the start of the season. The start of the season, we looked like we'll walk into another Red Bull dominance. Bahrain gave us that, and we were like, you know what? Red Bull maybe is going to dominate, but we're going to have an exciting season between the McLaren, Mercedes, and Ferrari, blah, blah, blah. 3 races later, Mercedes is nowhere, but it's just like Ferrari and McLaren, and then all of a sudden they are catching Red Bull. Just to correct myself before F1 Twitter police come at me, maybe they're not catching. Maybe it's Red Bull fumbling a bit here and there that made them put in this mistakes. Right? Yeah, but then again, again, like it's not me. Like even Helmut Marko said that. He's saying like we walked into the season expecting to eat everything, leave nothing behind. Now we're shocked that we have problems. So, what do you think, Baxty?
Yeah, with Red Bull, I think. Look, I mean, it's no coincidence that their form has dipped since Adrian said he was leaving. But I just think there's always going to be convergence in rule sets, and their advantage was always going to be eaten into. McLaren, okay, they weren't quite where they wanted to be, but they brought these massive upgrades to the car. As soon as they do that, they start competing, and they won in Miami. And okay, they had a big slice of luck to get there with the safety car timing and everything else, but they still proved later on that they could compete right at the front of the grid. Ferrari are headed in the right direction. I think Mercedes are getting there. I am very much a optimistic Mercedes fan. So I'm like always confident that we're going to get there at some point. The correlation issues from the start of the season seem to have resolved themselves, and I think now it's about adding performance to the car, which we will see. There's a big upgrade coming this weekend, I believe, so I'm looking forward to seeing the impact on that. But I think McLaren and Ferrari should hopefully be able to take the fight to Red Bull. I don't think it's going to be for drivers. We might see a constructors title fight this year if Perez is continually to be as bad as he was in Monaco. Because we've had the great Perez at the start of the season. We're now in the mid-season crap Perez. It's a common cycle with him. But yeah, I think Max isn't going to have it his own way. Red Bull are definitely going to be going downhill. Not to the extent where they're going to lose the championship, certainly not the drivers, but 2025 could be a very, very interesting year. And the reason why the Max to Mercedes rumors are coming about is because it's rumored that Red Bull's engine with Ford is not looking great. So he might be looking to jump ship ahead of time and go to somebody who's got a proven track record in engine formulas, such as Mercedes, such as potentially Honda, who he has a very good working relationship with.
Peter, what are your thoughts on the progress McLaren Ferrari has been showing in the last 4 races? Yeah. And specifically, I think I remember you mentioning something about the Lando win in Miami. And I think Red Bull have mentioned, I don't know, was it Red Bull? I'm not going to say Red Bull, but I would say it's mostly Helmut Marko. Said while we had floor damage. And then Max, when he was asked in the media pen, he was like, well, strange. The car felt exactly the same from the start of the weekend all the way to the end. I didn't feel any damage. What are your thoughts? Do you think these are just minor setbacks for Red Bull and the next race in Canada is just going to show up on full force, dominating again? Or are we looking at a potential turnaround from Ferrari and McLaren on Red Bull?
Oh, so much to say. So I would say I'm sitting back now with my microphone.
Be comfortable. You can be comfortable.
I can do it. You know, I've got the headphones and I'll be like, all right, go. No, I'm not going to do it. No, I mean, after the very sort of very acute points being made by my fellow guest, I realize how silly I've been during the conversation, but so I'll be serious for a second. I mean, look, I think a lot of this is also media hype. Let's not beat around the bush that we want a title fight. So if there's any incremental possibility that there's going to be a closer fight at the front of the grid, or is it this year you're going to get absolutely hype going on, and I was just looking through the media in the run up to our conversation. There's so much speculation and sort of like hype building about like, oh, is it the year? But let's take a step back of where we are. A year ago, Red Bull led the field by with 321 points. I think they were 154 points clear of Mercedes, if they remember last year, or something like that. And Verstappen had like almost 200 points. He was like 70 more than Perez, right? And then Alonso was like third or something like that. But this one, we've got a much closer title fight, and we do seem to have two teams that are getting to grips with it. I think that these circuits have also benefited the cars more than say some of the tracks later on in the season, which Red Bull seem to do quite well with. And I do think it is the systemic risk. It is the systemic issue facing Red Bull now. They've lost their Newey, and Newey's ridiculously unique brain. I'm sure scientists will be studying that in the future. He's going to Ferrari, and that's going to be a massive gutter punch for a lot of the staff in Red Bull. But does that mean that it's going to undermine the ability for them to perform now? Not sure about it. It's more, I think, a couple of factors. For me, it's whether or not McLaren can engineer quickly enough to make the car quick, that it can sort of compete consistently at the front for wins. They're sort of on the podium and almost at the winning, but they're not consistently doing it yet enough. And the problem with Ferrari is Ferrari. Italian politics being what it is, the amount of times I've been pulling my hair out with frustration at Leclerc, who I think's a lovely guy, but I wish he had more oomph and would hold Ferrari to account when they have screwed him over time and time again through poor strategical and mechanical decisions in races. So if we were to see a hypothetical second half of the season, or whatever, second and third quarters or parts of the season, for Leclerc to consistently challenge Max and begin to close that gap even more. Maybe the Red Bull does have more downforce issues or flooring issues, upgrades obviously coming through. Then maybe we could see, I would put more probably Ferrari on that likelihood driver's title at least. But it comes down to Leclerc's ability to be consistent and not. I wish he did basically more of what Lewis did, which was the Mercedes would say, "Come in, Lewis," and he's like, "No, screw you." I remember when he did it with Hungary so many times, and they're like, "You need to come in." And he was like, "No, I'm staying out," and he'd just stay out. It was he made the right call. Leclerc has been too entrusting of Ferrari's team calls, and I think he needs to take more risk in that. And if he does that, coupled with all the other things that we've mentioned and could mention now, I think you could see quite a good title fight. And I hope we do, because I would love Leclerc to be a world champion. I think he's an incredibly decent guy, as much as I like Norris to win more races. But I don't know. It's a tough one. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Baxty.
I think, saying what you're saying about Ferrari, they always seem to find a way to sabotage themselves at the completely wrong moment. 2022, case in point, they easily could have been fighting for the championship that year, but it just went horribly wrong for them. Binotto was rightly sacked, in my view, for that. I feel like Max is so consistent, and he's already built up such a lead this year that I think a fight for the drivers is going to be. It's probably going to be a little bit out of reach. Whereas I think because Ferrari and McLaren have more consistent pairings than Red Bull, that's why I think we could see a constructors fight happen. I think with Ferrari, you'd expect Leclerc to be quicker 9 times out, maybe 7 or 8 times out of 10. But Sainz will always be there or thereabouts behind him. He might throw in a stinker every so often. But let's not forget, he's fighting for his life. He's looking for a drive, and be it with Williams or Audi or Red Bull, he is fighting for his life, which is why I think he was so good in the early part of the season, because he had to get that impression upon people, and it was why his win in Australia was so good. And then McLaren, my fear for McLaren is that those two drivers are going to start taking points off each other, because they are very closely matched. And I think Lando is ahead at the moment purely because he's just got better tyre management. But Oscar's getting better with every single race. We saw how, he was right on Leclerc's tail for most of that Grand Prix in Monaco, until the last stint when the damage he got at the start of the race started to really affect his car. But I think McLaren could start losing points because Oscar and Lando start really fighting with each other. So Andrea Stella and Zach Brown are going to have to be really firm with them to say, right, at a certain point, we're going to ask you to hold position. And it's up to the drivers to obey that. Whether they do or not, I don't know. But it's going to be, I think we're in for a much more exciting season this year than we were last year, when we just turn up and it doesn't matter where Max starts, he's going to win from 16th on the grid because he feels like it. He's being made to work for his wins now. I mean, another couple of laps, Lando catches him in Imola. So
I think 2 more laps in Imola and that win would have been in the bag for Lando, but I wouldn't say in the bag, because when we saw how Max dealt with the whole tire situation and the battery, when he knew that Lando was taking literally chunks off him, 8/10 per lap.
Yeah.
And when I saw that, and I was like, surely Max has damage. There's no way this guy all of a sudden taking 8/10 off him that quick, and it looked scary. And Max, with the experience he have faced, and he faced one of the best drivers to ever go fast and take care of tires, Lewis Hamilton, in that 2021. And maybe he fall off to Lewis and lost to him a couple of times in 2021. Then when it came to building up his experience quickly, it helped him in Austin 2021, where he kept playing in not pushing, then starts pushing again. And because his tires were literally about to die and he had no option but to take care of them and just recover them and push. And we can see from the onboard of Lando in those last 3 laps, he was pushing like a madman, and you can see there was a lot of sliding and the steering wheel is going like all over the place. Like, that's how far he was fighting the car. But I think for Lando that will come as well in time. I don't think Lando needs experience more than what he needs currently on the grid, but I think the experience of fighting for the win and being like, let's say 5, 6, 7 behind, then you have to start pushing and as well manage your tires as you do in that, so you can have some life in them by the time when you get to your target, whatever, P2, P1, whatever it is. So I think with the whole Paris situation, and I don't know, was it in your space, BaxtyB, or I forgot in whose? I have mentioned if the pace of Ferrari and McLaren is legit based on what we saw in Miami, or I don't think it's Miami. No, it was another race. I think Australia, where Perez finished like P5 or something like that, and he got 2 extra positions based on the safety car. So I was like, if Perez continues in this form and McLaren is this competitive and Ferrari as well, because they all have good drivers. Leclerc is a great talent and he's a championship material driver. Sainz is a solid second driver for your team. Unless you're a small midfield team, he could be a solid number 1. I don't have to talk much about Oscar and Lando. And I was like, if these teams really picks up the pace this much, then Perez is in a big trouble. Any misstep from him, any bad qualifier for him is going to cost him so much. And I think for Red Bull, don't care how much it cost him, much of how much it's going to cost them in the constructors, because that's where all the money is. They're not ready to drop another constructor, and they're looking for more. And they know they probably have this season and next season to do it, because 2026 is probably for everyone to play, from what we heard from Adrian Newey. I know a lot of people have talked about the 2026 regulation, and I've mentioned it a lot, but so far, I don't know what it just looks, like a gray area, that gray area. you don't know what is it good, is it bad, you have no clue. Like Max said, the cars are horrible to drive, and they need to change that. Adrian Newey did not even need to look into the simulator. That man looked at the design and said, "This is gonna be garbage." Like he didn't even wait to see what the simulators will say, and this was 8 months or 9 months before even Max tried those cars in the simulator. And I think there was similar feedback from other drivers saying that these cars, and again, we can't be commenting much about it, but we can just be like, wow, if the driver themselves saying it's crap, but what are we getting in 26? What do you think, Baxty?
Yeah, there's so much we don't know about 2026. I mean, there was a report a few months ago where they were like, well, at the moment, the cars are spinning on a straight because of the current aero regulations. So they're having to like tweak them and they're not sure what's going on. I mean, clearly, ground effect is still going to be a massive part. You know, the core of the 2022 aero regs are definitely going to carry over into 2026. But there's going to be a lot more emphasis on engine, which is why you're looking at the likes of Mercedes, who nailed the last engine regs and are still, I think, top of the class in terms of engine, I think, or near or there or thereabouts. There's definitely a lot to be concerned about. But we can't really say too much. We're still 2 years out from those regulations appearing before us. It's very similar to how we were before 2022. We thought we knew what to expect, but you just couldn't be sure because it's all just rumor and hearsay, and you know, teams putting things out there like, "Oh, our engine's really good. Yeah, you should look at Mercedes." You know, you're just gonna have to wait and enjoy what comes beforehand.
I personally think those cars looks ugly from whatever the FIA dropped. That is my personal opinion. Don't take it serious so far. But when I saw the modules that they showed what the cars could possibly look like, I was like, if that's really what the car's gonna look, that's ugly. And I do not put that in the bin. I do not need a car that looks like it has a huge mouth beneath it, the vents for the floor entry. Not as aesthetic, whatever we have now with these modern cars. Peter, what do you think? Do you think F1 is doing the right direction with where they go in 2026?
I think that what makes me kind of think about the relevance of Formula E, really, if we're increasingly introducing electrical power and dropping the MGU. It's, I mean, I guess removing the MGUH is the biggest, it's the biggest singular change. And I think that's controversial
And
for
increasing the power, increasing the power from the battery itself.
Yeah, so I mean, I haven't seen if F1 had brought out new car designs so far. I mean, it just looks sort of a bit blocky for me, and it doesn't have the streamline aspect that I generally just miss the engine sounds of the late 2000s. I mean, that's what got me into F1 in the first place, was that high pitched and just the V10s, man, holy shit, so good. And yeah, I mean, I don't know really what to expect. I think it's you could see the Mercedes are quite good at this. They often are quite on the ball. Red Bull gradually do get on it, but as you said, that the Ford engine element could be a problem here. McLaren and Ferrari, I feel that they take a little bit more time to warm up because they put too much focus on still trying to maximize the current time. At least from my experience in the past few, seasonal changes. And then you've obviously got the driver element there, and the fact that Newey is now changing as well. I think that is a sizable hiccup for Red Bull. I think, Mercedes would look quite favorable initially. I mean, I really want Ferrari to be honest with you. I just want Lewis to come back as reigning supreme. Although I'd love, actually, no, I think I'd like Alonso most of all. That guy seriously needs more than 32 wins. Should have 100 himself, and so on. So I think 26 is, I mean, it's good that we're moving towards more sort of sustainable elements, but it would be nice if we could still keep the noise and the aspects of what we really like about the about the cars and ensure that the grid is tied together and that overtaking is more. There are more opportunities for that, and it doesn't just become another procession. I certainly don't want any more, people being able to be out in the front and it's like, it's getting close for second. Who's going to get it? Oh, that second podium's looking real tight right now. It just gets a little bit ridiculous, to be honest with you. So, yeah, I think it would be nice to also just have a period where we stop making seismic changes and just have a period where it's like, it's about the racing and we see how much they can evolutionize, not revolutionize the cars over, technical advancements and minor incremental changes, not sort of the entirety of the system changing, because it means also it's disruptive for like comparing season to season and being able to make historical comparisons. When F1 introduced the point system changes in 2009, that was such a screw up because everyone was like, well, how on earth do we compare different people? So that's something I'd like to see. I'd like 26 to be the last moment, maybe for the rest of the decade, where we keep them at that same level and stop, introducing too many radical changes, because otherwise I'm a bit of a consistency person.
I mean, you've mentioned a good point here about the radical changes. And one thing that I did not understand about this era of the ground effect cars and with these chunky tires. Okay, personally, I don't mind if the cars get bigger. That's one thing. And I don't think cars will get bigger than this, even though people are not noticing this. And given the aerodynamic effect that some of these cars have, which is the era before these teams base their designs on building these cars as slimmer as possible, make their engine as compact and slimmer as possible. I'm talking about from 21 until 2017. They made sure like these cars could go as slim as possible, but focus on building a better aero from the front end, which is with the barge boards and all that stuff. Tires were smaller and these cars were flying. 2022 came, tires became bigger, and you have now more downforce from the floor than before. Barge boards gone means you cannot manipulate literally the air. So now you have the clear air coming and hitting your side pods. So how do you build around it? And with the removal of barge boards, so these cars now looks a little bit more like chunky from the side, like they're like bulky. But I don't see that's the problem with F1. The real problem with F1 is that now that these 2024 cars or the 2020 regulation, now these cars look fast. When I saw the practice from the first race of the season in Bahrain, and I saw how fast these cars are going, I right away pulled the footage of the 2022 practice just to compare. And I was like, my goodness, these cars looks miles off from whatever I'm looking at in 2024 over here. So it means the steps of improvement can jump quickly. So one thing that I'm feeling sad that, okay, this regulation, now it's getting better in 2024. It took it 2 seasons, which is okay. The cost cap is the major factor in this whole thing that's holding big teams like Ferrari and Mercedes from be like, boom, 50 million upgrade. Boom, another 40, another 30. I'm winning. Yes, we are the best. That cost cap helped. Why would you introduce a regulation that you're going to keep almost for only 4 years and then change it? It is one thing that I did not like. I get like even last week people I was getting heat from that, oh yeah, you don't understand racing if you hate Monaco. No, I don't hate Monaco. I just don't see a purpose in changing cars, make them slower so we can race in Monaco. So there's something about the speeds. If I bring one of those, I don't know if this is a little bit off topic, but we're not going to go off topic, but because it's part of racing. Have any of you ever watched those Red Bull racing for the airplanes, the prop planes, when they go between the
seen clips of it.
Yeah.
So the planes going between the cones, and they see who can do those laps in quickest time and everything. So those planes, they're small. They can go as fast for their size. They are nimble in cornering, right? If I bring a fighter jet to corner around those cones, it will not hit them all correctly. Why? Because that fighter jet is much quicker than that small, nimble prop plane. So the thing about Monaco, F1 cars are getting faster. And the faster they get, it does not mean people will have the quick reaction to just dive and overtaking everywhere they go. Back in 2007 or 2008, all the way back, the cars were not as fast as whatever we have today in the straight line speed. And when it comes under braking, the size also plays a factor. And you're like, how can I move? Even if you bring the cars much smaller, which is I don't mind, you are still gonna have that speed factor. That's the cars coming at very speedy braking zones, and then all of a sudden, the move to just move their wheel as they would do with a much slower engine, it would not be the case. So I think the one thing that I'm not liking with this whole change is that dropping everything that's F1 now is good about. We have now competition. Sure, F1, you got my attention. 2025 have proved to be, 2024 have proved that yes, F1 teams can catch up. And yes, a team that was starting the season last year now is actually able to fight for wins. Mercedes is no longer this big bad dog who can just bring upgrades and bully everyone, and they're on the back foot. But that's Mercedes doing by changing engineers, uh, not listening to their drivers and focusing on one main concept, and it did not work for them again. And end up taking the guy from his role who resigned. I'm talking about Mike Elliott, and bringing James Allison, expect him to cook up wonders for you out of nowhere. Mercedes case, that's them doing that to themselves. Nobody did that to them. They did that to themselves. So yeah, in general, yeah, I don't know what to expect in 2026, but I'm just hoping. I don't care how bad these cars could be or how ugly they can look. All I care about is that teams, for some reason, Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes, Red Bull, I don't care. Bring Alpine, bring the lot, bring everyone. Audi, everyone has good engine, a good car under them, a good driver pairings, and give us some excitement. I know it's almost impossible to wish for 5 teams to be at the top or 6 together, but at least I think that's the only thing that's going to keep F1 fans watching, because if another team dominates again, then I think F1 is almost doomed, and we're going to go back to Liberty Media playbook. Right. F1 is bad. All right, guys, what do we do? Let's start going to more street circuits that I know nobody's going to like, so at least we can have some new engagement from the local people over there, so we can stay relevant. Because you had the Ferrari dominance. 2008, 2009 was good. Then you had 10, 11, 12, 13, Red Bull dominance. From 14 to 2020, Mercedes dominant, one good year with Red Bull and Lewis and Max. Then 2022, all Red Bull. Up until this point, now people's hopes are going back. So yeah, I'm just hoping F1 really, really stop making these radical changes every 4 or 5 years, and let one set of regulations, at least for 8 years, to be good for everyone to be close and have a good season. Let's end this with talking about Andretti again. Given of the amount of times we've been hearing about Andretti every now and then, and the engineers that he's been signing from F1, as well as Pat, as well, one of the biggest names that joined Andretti for the F1 project. I'm going to give this to you, Pyotr, and then to you, BaxtyB.
Can you go to BaxtyB first? I need to answer something else. Do 1 second.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Yes.
sure. For me, I mean, there was talk about Andretti buying Alpine and stuff. I don't agree with that at all. What I want to happen is I want more teams on the grid, and because more teams on the grid means more competition, and it means it will encourage teams to do better. I feel like we've been at this 10-team monopoly since sort of midway through 2016, 27, and start of 2017. That's a long time. And the FIA opened up the process to allow 4 teams applied. Andretti was the only one that was successful. And yet somehow F1 is saying, oh, they're not going to give us any brand value. Well, I hope they watched the Indy 500 a couple of weeks ago, because Andretti were right there and, did pretty well. They didn't get the win. That was Penske. But, they were still there, driving well and showing that they were a massive part of US motorsport. And then that in itself will bring value, because you are bringing a well-established US motorsport brand to the team, to the sport. So it's not Andretti getting more from F1 as F1 tried to justify. It was complete nonsense. I think we should have 12 teams personally. I don't think you should have any more than 12. But we do need to have an opportunity to bring new teams to the grid. Obviously I'm slightly biased because I've done some work with them, but Lucky Sons are Lucky Sons, I think, are doing something different that I think is interesting. And then you've got High Tech and Roden Carlin as well, who applied. But Andretti are showing they're serious, that this isn't a joke application. Okay, look, Michael's not gone about it the right way when he was going around Miami in 22 and basically trying to force other teams' hands, which they were never going to respond favorably to that. But every time a barrier has been put in front of them, they have met that barrier and exceeded it. They're like, well, okay, you need an engine supplier. Okay, we're bringing General Motors. And then, saying, oh, we need to pay more money. And they've said, well, we don't want to pay your inflated dilution fee, but we can pay it if we have to, type thing. So I think Andretti would be great for the sport. I mean, going to Congress, I think, was maybe a little bit of overkill. But again, shows they're serious, that they're willing to get political in all of this. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden Joe Biden got a phone call in the Oval Office saying, can you help us out, please, Mr. President? But my core argument here is just Andretti need to be on the grid, because it will make the other teams better, because it will give them another competitor with which to think about, and it will make them think differently and go, right, we're not going to be comfortable anymore. And these guys are not going to come in and be at the back of the grid. They're going to be in that midfield, you'd think, with the ambition that they've got. So it's going to make those at the bottom really push themselves.
And Peter, I'm going to pass this to you, and with you, we're going to end it. And also, mentioning Andretti, I want to add a point to you. The F1 team's discussion about giving points all the way down to P12, or give everyone points from P1 to P20. What's your thoughts on that with the Andretti?
No, I don't think we should become British and sort of reward you for partaking in the race. If you're in P15, you crap and you need to do better. I don't think rewarding points for sort of simple participation. I don't think participation trophies are really the answer here. Second, also, I think, probably no more than 12 teams. I don't really want oversaturation on the grid. I can't remember. I read some scientific analysis of sort of the optimal. I think it is 10 to 12, probably 11 teams. So no more than that, certainly. But also you mentioned the point about, Andretti being sort of more likely in the lower midfield type of area. I hope so, because if they were to join, we don't want another 2010 early 2010 period where you had 3 new teams come in and all of them fell by the wayside. Like, I really like the idea of a Caterham F1 team. I thought the green was looking great, and Caterham cars are great. I thought there was it had a good branding to it, I think. And it fell by the wayside because they could never get any further up. So if they were to come in, then I would hope that they had a baseline, but they didn't also just buy all their pieces from Ferrari or do a bit of a Haas, So there's that element. In addition, I would say that I haven't read into it as intricately as you guys probably have, but I'm not. I don't take kindly to Michael, and we can joke about him going political. But the very last thing we want is more politics. We want racing, and I don't really like what Liberty Media has done. I like the fact it's opened it up to the US markets, but I don't like the Americanization and commercialization of Formula One. I don't want more street circuits. I want Italy. I want Belgium. I want racing tracks that are good for racing, not because you can get a bunch of bloody celebrities to come and and we can sort of half the time Gavo and I, gallivant around with the cameras around them. I actually just want to look at the racing, to be honest with you. I like the idea of this short sprints and things like that. That's great. Anyway, reason I'm saying all this is because I don't want there to be too much politicalization or politicization of the thing. And, I think it was pretty hilarious that, F1 rebuffed their entry. And it is also concerning that, they claim that they haven't really been in consistent correspondence and meeting with F1 management. So I think there needs to be some greater degree of transparency here from the Andretti team. From a purely racing side, yeah, I totally get your point. But unfortunately, so much of the racing or tensions and stuff happens off the track as it does on the track. And so, I want to see a bit of a clear up around the reputation of Andretti, and particularly the senior management or names associated with it in terms of what it does, again, for the sport from a purely just racing standpoint or whatever. Then sure, I think it'd be great. And they've got, a good baseline, I think, in terms of their facilities and things like that. And it would be cool to have that American name, there, not the Andretti, but I mean General Motors and so on. But yeah, I think it needs to be cleaned up a little bit, and for them to have a clear roadmap of what they want to achieve by sort of the first half of the first season, the second half, and then the next 2-3 years, so that it's well planned out and they can slot in with minimal disruption, but whilst bringing greater fan and excitement. So I don't know if you'd agree with that.
No, honestly, I don't disagree with you much on what you just said. And also on the point of Liberty Media, I don't mind having new circuits into F1, just something similar to what MotoGP is doing. Like sometimes they bring new circuits, but
Yeah,
most of them are like purpose-built circuits. I'm fine with that. But when you bring me more street circuits and you are changing the culture and the direction of a whole sport to something that it was not meant to be, like, yeah, sure, Monaco is one off given the history of it and everything. Other street circuits, there's like 2 or 3 on the calendar currently. Sure, they're fine. Everyone was skeptical about Las Vegas, but then it banged. But we have to wait and see the season. But then you are not always going to just hit the target. Sometimes you're going to hit and miss. And if you're going to keep hitting and missing and going on that trend, then you're going to just keep losing fans, because you have to think about it on the long run. Not every season is going to be exciting. Not every season is going to be a good season. And sometimes just keeping some stuff as is, not doing too much radical changes to it, and especially changes that fans might not like. Like, we don't have Germany on the calendar, we don't have France on the calendar, and they have some great circuits we can go back to, not go to new ones. Go back to the circuits I have nothing in F1. What circuits that F1 used to race in. So yeah, in terms of Andretti, F1 wanted, or Liberty Media wanted, a market in US. They wanted an American team. They got Haas, but Haas does not have that big fandom factor. There are people who support Haas just for being American, some American fans, but they are not really their number one favorites, just because they're like, why would I be watching teams scrapping over a point or two? I want to support the winners. I want to support Ferrari, Lewis, Max, whoever is there at the top. George, for example, as well, him too. And so yeah, bringing in Andretti, especially he won Indy 500 and he's a legend in American motorsports and very well known, and it adds to a whole different thing to the American fan bases. And one thing we know US has over any country in the world, and that would be marketing and advertisement. You can come as an ant and they will make you a giant.
Yeah, I think that the Formula One can. No, I was just going to say that I think Formula One can learn a little bit from MotoGP in terms of operational. Branding, they've got it down to a T. I do wish they wouldn't forget the original viewers at the expense of trying to claw in new ones. But yeah, I think it's a balance, and it'd be nice if they focused a little bit more on the actual racing itself and not just the optics around the racing. I think Andretti's desire to continue to press ahead with introducing a car, even though they have no idea if they're ever going to be on the grid, shows you a statement of intent. And if even if I have my concerns or reservations about them from certain other areas, I do respect their commitment to getting on the grid in some way, shape, or form. But sorry, I know I interjected there, but I really
no. You made a valid point. I would love Baxty and Pyotr. Do you have anything last to add before we close the curtains?
Baxty, after you, my friend.
Yeah, I just think, just quickly responding to what you were all saying there, so I think they're trying so hard to get this American market, but then, I mean, look at what Bernie did. Bernie would go into countries and build circuits, and look, COTA is the perfect example. I know COTA was built with other racing series in mind, but they went there. Herman Tilke designed that track, and then they've got everything going on. It's just absolutely brilliant track that everybody universally loves. I find it funny, Peter, that you said that MotoGP, they need to follow what MotoGP are doing. Who just bought MotoGP? And that's Liberty. So that'll be interesting to see how that one goes. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, no, just to say, no, I know they bought it. I'm just meaning like they've done some interesting things from an operational standpoint. I'm trying to, distinguish parts. And they made it competitive, and it's been. I suck at bikes. I think I'd look absolutely. Well, I think I'd look like Clarkson in the gear. To be honest with you, about as rad as that, right? I've never really watched it that much, but I have been aware of fellow motorsport fans who watch both. And yeah, I think that there's some takeaways they can do from that. And I think I'll just underline as a final couple of takeaways. I am extremely excited for Audi. I think when you get powerhouses like that, what Audi did in the 80s with the Quattro system, I know it's rallying completely different, but they're innovative people, right? And I was extremely excited at the prospect of Porsche coming in. But Mercedes, I mean, German manufacturers, German designers, they're a reason why, along with Japan, they're some of the most incredible. So I think when they came in, that would be really cool. I mean, I'm sure we'll have a conversation again, hopefully, if I'm welcome back, before they join. But that is, but that's something I keep in the back of my head is that. And then just on the track designs and stuff like that, just please stop hiring Herman Tilke. Fucking hell. Like, he's a great engineer, but he's a shit artist. Like, he can't design for shit. So can we please just stop with that? Make him. I'd prefer him to. No, actually, I don't know. Should we drop a poll in the tweet if you're watching on Twitter? Who do you like more? Drop a comment.
I'm gonna. Go ahead. What do you want to say? Go ahead.
No,
what do you want to say?
Who do you hate more, or who's better for F1's toxicity? Herman Tilke or Tilke or Fabio Bravatore, or however they say hell.
I'm gonna clip this and I'm gonna post it with the poll. See what we get from this. And on that note, I would love to thank you, Baxty. Sorry for taking too long from your time, gentlemen. And I would love to thank you, Peter. And I know this is not going to be the last one between us three. And thank you everyone for being with me. And now I just entered the zone of my birthday zone. And I'm very happy to share this moment with you guys as I'm entering into my birthday. I know Peter's like, what is he talking about? No. I was just mentioning the clock now just ticked and it's my birthday. So I just noticed that. Completely forgot about it.
Where are you?
I'm in Saudi Arabia.
Oh shit! I didn't know you're actually in Saudi Arabia. Oh, fair. No, I know you're from Saudi, but I didn't know you were actually there. Oh, fucking hell! Happy birthday, mate!
Happy birthday, mate! Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, guys.
On a Monday evening, I don't. What the fuck you doing?
No, man. I've been to England, and for me, Brits are like my favorite people. after about hours, so yeah, I just enjoy the banter and everything. I've been to England. I lived in London, Bournemouth for quite some time. So yeah, I love England still, no matter how much British people talk.
They're much better than across the channel, eh? Those weird. I've got to say another French stuff before we go, so I can't help it. I just got to poke.
Oh my God, man! You're not leaving anything for those four people. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is me, your host Ahmed, here with the amazing Pyotr and the fantastic BaxtyB with you from the Breaking News show. Thank you very much, and good night. And end right there.